So thank you everybody for coming tonight. This is the virtual launch of this exciting new book, the Mi'kmaq Campfire Stories of Prince Edward Island. Yay, you got it. And this is written by Julie Pellisier-Lush, and with the art by Laurie Martin. So I'm the publisher for Acorn Press. I'm Terry Lee Bulger, and this is just a really exciting moment in time because I don't think that there's been another book like this. Yeah, exactly. It's very exciting. There's certainly not been another book like this for the PEI Mi'kmaq stories, but I don't know that there's another book like this in general for any of them. Any Mi'kmaq book like that is for this age group. So there are sort of one tale in a kid's book, but this is a beautiful collection of the stories that are told around the campfire, traditionally by the Mi'kmaq people. So the idea came to me through Laurie Martin originally. Laurie pitched this book idea a number of years ago with a lot of enthusiasm. She was so excited about doing art for these stories because she really felt like these should be preserved and stories that should be passed on to the next generations of maritime children. And like I said, there was no other book like this. So she was very passionate about it. And she went and spoke to her friend, Julie, and brought that enthusiasm over to Julie. And, you know, a few years later, it takes a while sometimes to pull these things together. But I think you can tell that they created a very beautiful and hopefully lasting collection that will live in schools and classrooms and bedrooms and campfires for years and years to come, hopefully. So just a brief introduction. You know, Julie is probably no stranger to many of you. She's quite prolific poet, is now the poet laureate of Prince Edward Island. She's a storyteller. She tells bringing the traditional stories to people all over the island. She's also the author of My Mi'kmaq Mother, which came out a number of years ago and was a bestseller. And she's certainly known in many, many circles all over the island. Laurie is an artist and a freelance designer and graphic designer. And this is her first book. But as you can tell, we're very excited to be working with Laurie on this new work. So without further ado, and let's get on to the main program of the evening, I'm going to turn it over to the author and the artist. Oh, and I should say, if you're not speaking, you might want to put yourself on mute. Just makes it easier for the others to hear. So.
Thank you so much, Terry Lee. And I think before we get started, I've arranged for a couple of young men to do an introductory song, if that is all right. I've gathered them downstairs, so I might mute myself because you'll probably hear it two ways.
That's excellent.
If you are ready downstairs, are you guys ready? Turn on your video and turn on your sound, and we will get started. Hello, Peter. All right, you ready to go, boys?
That was amazing.
Oh,
That was so good.
thank you so much, boys. Now I'm going to ask Rick to mute again. There we go. Now, I don't know, did you want to start, Laurie, to talk about the inspirations of those beautiful images that I can see throughout the whole book?
Sure. A lot of years ago, I guess my first inspiration was I met Chief Charlie Sark, and he was just opening up his company where he was creating his figurines of the Glooscap legends. And I was working at a figurine factory, um, pretty much the same way we were doing Anna Green Gables. And so he came a lot to our business for advice and things like that. And I fell in love with the stories. And I've been hooked on them for so many years. And it's kind of like I believe that the Glooscap legends is sort of a hidden gem. It's like Canada's Brothers Grimm. It's just an undiscovered gem, and I hope that we can make a volume, all along the way. So, yeah. And then meeting you, that was like sort of kept the inspiration going. It was really wonderful to be paired with such um, a person that has so much knowledge of all of the legends and performs them. And it's just incredible to have such a great partner. So made it pretty easy. Yeah.
Well, I remember talking to a few people about the work you did with your art, and I think you're being very modest, because I know for myself that Laurie actually attended quite a few cultural gatherings so that she could get the movements of the dancers, so she could get the colors of the regalia, so she could see the beauty of our culture. And she took all this knowledge that she gathered coming to all these different events and created these beautiful drawings throughout the whole story. As you can see, they are absolutely beautiful, including things that I wasn't even anticipating. When you look here and you see the basket there, that's a quill basket.
I love details.
That took off. And I think it's absolutely beautiful that you can find the beauty in the details, right? And I mean, a lot of books just sort of have a picture and there really isn't much in it, but the pictures that Laurie has created for this book is one of those things where you look at it one time and you see something beautiful, and you look at the next time and there's something more to see. So, I mean, I think
Thank
that's the
you.
beauty of your of it.
Thank you very much. Wow.
And she has additionally continued to make more beautiful pictures, as we had talked about all the different stories that there are. And as many of you know, there's as many Mi'kmaq stories about our traditions, our past, our history, as there are grains of sand all along our beaches of Prince Edward Island. So you can imagine how many stories there really are. And there's just different ways of telling them as well, as this is a new genre. And I just wanted to say how pleased and proud I was that we are able to present this book to everybody, and especially for all of you here tonight who have taken the time to come to this launch. And we're so proud, aren't we, Laurie? I think it's,
Yeah. Oh,
it's
absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, it's frozen.
all these meetings. Hey, Terry Lee, and to be able to sit here together and say, we've done it. I mean,
Yeah.
we were
Absolutely.
years ago sitting and talking at a restaurant over the possibilities of this,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
here now, and it's amazing.
It is pretty amazing. And one of the things that I think is really unique, and I've seen, the number of books that have been published is, but the way, the stories come to life through the illustrations, but also through your language and the chants that are in, mixed in with the campfire stories and that kind of thing. It kind of brings a much more multi-dimension to the story that I really haven't seen that before, which I think is pretty amazing. So, is that something that happens when you're sitting around the campfire, you just automatically kind of go into a chant in the middle of the story, or is that?
Well, the most amazing thing is that when you do this, you have to think that traditionally, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, it would always be to the storyteller, and it would usually be the elder in the family unit, because in the winter is when we would tell most of our stories, and we would be gathered in our own individual family lodges, and usually the person who is the story keeper would start sharing their stories, and then it would be a time for the young children to learn them, so that when they grew up, they could share them with their grandchildren. And honestly, it's sort of the way of the storyteller. Some people who like to include a lot of singing or a lot of movement or a lot of dance, whatever it is that keeps those children entertained, because when they're entertained, they're learning. And as they're learning, they're going to remember. And as they grow up, those memories will still be there, and they'll be able to share them to the next generation, next generation. And I think it's important to make sure, like I've seen many different kinds of storytellers, and some are really just those ones where they will tell you the story and it will have like the beginning, middle, and end. And one of the neat things that I've learned over time is every storyteller is a bit different. And for me, I really love to include the songs, because the songs sort of give you that break and you're able to stop and go, this is the part that we get to sing and we all get to join in together and become a part of it. So when you're sitting there with your children or your grandchildren and you're reading this book and all of a sudden you see the, way ahead, you'll know that it's time that all the kids can either belt it out or you can find your own beat. Because I find even if a song is just written, people can create their own beat, their own melody to whatever they're reading, and it can become their song, their part of their story, their traditions as that gets passed down, right? Which is amazing.
It's also a connection that a lot of other stories just don't like bring everybody together and want to participate and bring it alive. I find it brings everybody alive, brings children like more together, and there's always something to learn from these stories. They always have like a good positive message, or like a warning message that this is this way. There's always something, little snippet, incredibly on an educational level in these legends that I really love. And like the culture is so fascinating. There's how many cultures have like in their stories witches and giants, and just there's so many multitudes of different characters, tricksters, and it's just that's what I love about the art end of it, I guess, too.
Yeah, that certainly makes it,
I love that.
yeah. Makes it fun, especially for kids
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah.
To imagine all those amazing characters, for sure. Julie, maybe you could talk a little bit about the campfire and the importance of the campfire stories.
I think I wanted it to be fire because that's a time when you're not busy really doing anything but connecting with each other. Right now, in this day and age, it would be a time where you're either at some beautiful provincial park here on PEI and the
Texting
sun
your
is slowly,
friends.
and you're sitting with family and friends, and everybody who around is you love, and your walls are down. So you're able to sit there and just enjoy each other's company and to share stories, how was your day, hon? And those sort of things. So it connects you to each other. It connects you to the people who you're with. And campfire stories, I think, is a way just to have such a gentle way of sharing who we are through our stories in a way where everybody is open to them. Because when you think of a campfire here in PEI, you think of just gatherings and of coming together as a group. And I think when I think of this book, I think that's sort of what I want people to have a feel like. Or when you think about it, hopefully in terms of the schools, when everybody in the kindergarten or grade 1 or grade 2 is all sitting in a circle in front of the teacher, and the teacher is holding the book and part of the story. And that circle is still a part of those campfire stories that you would do, that pattern, that's
I've heard it called like the indigenous peoples like TV, the campfire.
yes. It's true. True.
Absolutely.
Um,
Now,
did you have a reading or something you wanted to do? I mean, the singing was
That's what
amazing.
I
We could
was
do that again. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
here we go. That's what I was thinking too. And let's see, we've got to start at the beginning. So even if we creation, and as you can see, when we talk about our creation story, we're talking about how we came to be. Now, everybody has a creation story. Every culture, every person on this planet has a story of where they came from. And the amazing thing is, when I go into the schools and I talk to the children and I say, so where did you come from? And that's when those eyes will open up and they'll have a story to share, because everybody has a story of where they come from, whether it's right now, like if they've come from a different country, or if it's their longer story, whatever story that ends up being. Now, for Indigenous people, we have a whole bunch of different creation stories. And this was the first one that I had learned. And I really enjoyed it. And I had made it into a poem in 2009. And then it later became a script in 2011. And I've been working with this one for so long. I absolutely love it. And here it says, creation. In the beginning, every group of people all over the world has a story or legend that tells them where they came from. This is the first part of that story for us. We have many different types of storytellers, but we all want to make our stories entertaining and fun. For me, I like to add music and movement in my stories to help encourage the imagination. My stories will also change for the listener. For example, my words will be simplified for an audience of small children and a little more flowery and dramatic for the older audiences. So the listener will rarely hear the same story told the same way from the same storyteller. Now, it starts with a chant. And if anybody has seen the show, they'll know this chant. Or if they don't, they can actually create their own melody for it as well. Way hey, two drum beats. Way hey, two drum beats. Way hey, two drum beats. Way hey. See, I had to add that one in because that's how I always do it. Long before the lobster scurried around on the floor of the ocean, before the eagle flew in the sky with its beautiful motion, there was a beautiful being the Mi'kmaq people called the Wise One. The Wise One held all the knowledge of how everything must be done. He was as old as time and lived in the darkness, and with all of his wisdom, he started to plan. The wise one looked at the dark around him and decided it was time for light, to create a place that he could look at with pride. To leave everything black would just not be right. With a blink of his eyes, little lights started to form. All around him they grew different sizes, and the wise one began to hum. Now, as the music passed over his tongue and through his lips, those lights all started to create warmth, and galaxies were created. The warmth of those lights made the wise one smile, and so he had a long rest under his brand new creation. A few months, a few years, and a couple of hours, the wise one awoke from his long, dreamless rest. He looked at his beautiful creation and thought with some distress that there was no one there to share in his amazing success. So he decided to create a companion, a wise being who could learn from his wisdom and share in the joys of his new creations. The warrior took form, with his head in the direction of the rising sun, and his 2 feet in the direction of the sun when the day is done. 2 arms had he outstretched in 2 directions, south and north. With each direction covered, the universe just had to wait for him to come forth. Like the Prince of Creation, he arose and gave thanks to the one who gave him life. I shall call you Glooskap, as I created you from nothing, the wise one said. And he gave Glooskap a tremendous gift, special powers. His body had the strength of 10 men, and his mind was extra sharp and quick. After a few months, a few years, and a couple of hours, the wise one awoke from his long, dreamless rest. He looked at the universe he created with pride, and he invited Glooskap to sit down by his side. A pipe he took from his bundle, wrapped with care. He lit the tobacco and invited Glooskap to share. The pipe was very special. It symbolized a peace between the two who sat side by side. It was a sacred peace pipe, the first of its kind. As they puffed on the pipe, it became clear to the Creator he would now create people, and they would look just like him. They would be created to be strong, proud, and special right from the start. They would all be his children, whom he would call Mi'kmaq. Yo, yo, way, yo, hey. Yo, yo, way, yo, hey. Yo, yo, way, yo, hey, ah, hey, yo. Yo, yo, way, yo, hey. Yo, yo, way, yo, hey. Yo, yo, way, yo, hey, ah, hey, yo. And on that second page here, that Tyrion was showing you, now there is Glooskap holding the beautiful island of Abaguit. Now, when Abaguit was created by the Wise One, it was such a beautiful island that at first he wanted to keep it up in the sky because it was just so beautiful. But after a while, they decided that it had to come and be placed right in the middle of the St. Lawrence, where there it stayed, the bright red mud, for year after year till today. So that is one of the stories in our beautiful Mi'kmaq Campfire Stories of Prince Edward Island. And it is unique to PEI, and it is a story that has been brought down from generation to generation. There are many other creation stories because there is the creation of the island, there is the creation of the trees, the birds, the fish, all of those stories are a part of creation. So this, I made sure to say, is part 1 of creation.
Well, I must say how beautiful that was to listen to you read. I've read these a number of times, of course, going through the process. But to actually, hear your voice and the chanting, and it just was mesmerizing.
Doesn't that make you want to draw some? It's
Maybe you.
it's really easy to get enthralled with your artwork when you go and watch her perform.
I bet. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So maybe we could have people ask questions if they have questions, or is there more that you guys wanted to say first? Okay.
Well, I have a few that I can start with, but if
Okay.
anyone else wants to, you can unmute yourself or just write it in the chat if you're shy and I can read it out. I'm Genevieve. I work at Acorn too. So we kind of covered like how Laurie was inspired, but for Julie, like, was this something in your mind already, like that these stories should be a book before Julie talked to you, or had you thought about a book for children in this way before for Julie?
Hey, Laurie, so what made you decide?
Oh, me. Oh, I thought you were asking her.
Well, yes, I guess both of you.
Well, for myself, I read a couple of older Mi'kmaq storybooks that my sister had bought me as a gift, and they were very inspiring, and it was just like for me, it was a really, I love, I guess, all of the colors in the culture. And it's been so interesting to learn because I had to learn right from the beginning, and I'm still learning as I go and creating. And it's just so interesting and colorful and enjoyable for myself, I guess. Yeah.
And before Laurie came to you, Julie, did you think about writing a children's book, or had that been in your?
I think I always had the idea that it really should be done, because I think that the danger is that if we stop sharing our stories, then they could be lost again. I mean, I don't think the way our youth are right now, they're so engaged in the stories, in the culture, in learning the language, the drumming, the dancing. But I always think that it's so good that if my great, great, great grandkids can be able to open the book and still be able to read my words, that it preserves those stories for sure. And then when you can find them year after year in different libraries, and you'll be able to connect to them still, I think that almost ensures that they're going to outlive us at least, and then keep going after. So that's my hope, that they do continue to go on. And I think my hope was always that this would just be the start, and then that we would continue to keep collecting a couple stories here and a couple stories there, and make sure that they're preserved. And eventually there would be almost enough of them saved that we could feel that our work is getting closer to not ever being done. It will never be done. There's always that many stories, but at least that they'll be saved and preserved, and in a beautiful way with Laurie's art. I mean, what we've done together is to create this amazing collection of pictures, artwork, stories, and all of those stories have different themes. And I think that that's one of the important things I've never mentioned yet. But I think when you think about it, we had different stories for different reasons. And some of the stories were to protect environment, to protect Mother Nature, to make sure that everybody in the community had a place in the community. And like I said, the creation one gave everybody an understanding of where they came from. And when you think of the other stories we have, like a lot of them will either follow the 7 sacred teachings, where it's just how to be good to each other, how to look after each other. And one of the ones in this book is also one about believing in yourself. And I feel very strongly that the way the world is right now with COVID, we are spending more time in these boxes. We're spending more time, and our children are spending more time in these boxes. And unfortunately, not for everybody, but for some of our children, it's not a very friendly and happy place. And if they don't have a
No, exactly.
themselves, I just don't know how they can keep managing to move forward if the only outside world that they had, besides, especially, between March, April, May, and June and July, when we were stuck at home and their school was online, everything was online, their connections to their friends were online. And if they got on there and they didn't have a belief in themselves, and even the other story is no matter how small you are, you can change the world. And small isn't even just a literal sense. Like if you feel small, you can still build yourself up and still change the world. So these are themes that I think have, well, not so much really a hidden meaning, but I think they're things that are universal, and they're still strong enough today to be able to say, we still need to look after each other. We still need to look after our world, and we still need to take care of ourselves and believe in ourselves to move forward in a good way.
I love that. And I also heard you talk about, well, yesterday in the Women in Business presentation you did, you talked about
Yes.
when you would ask an elder or a parent for advice, that they would respond to you in story.
Yes.
So that is also, I think, really a powerful piece in those messages too.
Yes, that was I've been doing a lot of research, and I was looking at some of our traditional protocols because a lot of those traditional protocols are still alive today. And one of the protocols that I remember reading about was raising our children with non-interference, which means that is how I was raised as well. So if I had a problem at school, if somebody was being mean to me, and I'd go home and I'd say, Dad, so and so is being mean to me, what do I do? And instead of saying, okay, tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, when you go to school, you go and do this, and then you do this, and then it was never like that. It was, when I was a young boy, about your age, this is what happened to me when a similar situation happened. But you can take my words and act on them, or you can and do what you think is right, and I'll support you. But that non-interference, I really do think that that's still alive today. So you hear a story, and a lot of our trickster stories are really that to do and what not to do. And when you see our trickster stories, where one of the tricksters, we have many trickster animals, one of them being the rabbit, one of them being the fox. And one day the rabbit, who was being very, very mischievous with his friends, he got them all in a tizzy and made them all upset. And then he was punished by having his ears that were really tiny before stretched all landing down. And so when a child is told that story and they feel their little ears and they're going, well, do I want to cause drama today with my friends? I sort of like my ears this size because I don't want them to be stretched out and be hanging down. So those are the stories that we would call sort of those working with non-interference, by making sure that people know what's sort of right and what's sort of wrong, by telling them a story about some of their decisions that they could possibly make. And a lot of our stories are like that, especially our trickster ones.
Very cool. I'd also love to know, what are you guys working on right now? What projects are you kind of in your mind, or what's happening as far as your creations and creativity?
I kind of like to, I guess, chime in and say that to continue on from, because we're just at the beginning. Myself, I've been working on for the past few months. Basically, well, we both have. We've been working on the next couple of legends where we can actually make a couple of areas interactive with the children. Maybe like, we still have to discuss a lot of this, of course, with our publisher and see what she thinks, but on an educational level. It'd certainly be great to go to the area of, when we go into the older, I would love to be able to hit all grades in the schools, with the stories. And I believe that the Glooscap legends actually do that. But we could also do many other things with these characters, like reconciliation, I believe, should be brought into the schools at a young age and at an appropriate level. And then our children should be taught of everything, that's gone on. And it's our children through their education that I actually believe will change our government. And we do have an exciting project that we are working on, that we're going to try and get into all of the schools. But that's still kind of a little secret, so you'll have to stay tuned for that one. But it's going to be pretty amazing. Yes.
And how about you, Julie?
Oh my goodness, we have been talking about almost like a volume 2, Terry Lee, maybe. And
Oh, for sure. I'm up for it. I'm game.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Here I am telling the internet world, I'm game.
Yay! And of course, I've been tormenting Terry Lee, not incessantly, but a little bit abundantly, on a poetry book while I'm still in term for Poet Laureate. I would love to have at least one book of some of the poems that I know will hopefully outlive me as well by being preserved in this way. And
She already has
we had
the
talked-
illustrator.
and the illustrator.
Well, you got to move quick, because I think we had talked about that for next spring, right? So
Which is so exciting.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness, I'm just so thankful seeing all these beautiful faces around this monitor and knowing that, we are all on the same page, we're all in the same heart, we're all moving forward. And honestly, just as Laurie was saying, when we talk about reconciliation, when we have a story book that contains these stories from long, long ago, and every time I've gone to Bookmark and every time that I've gone to Indigo, it's been sold out.
Isn't that wonderful?
And I finally just messaged Acorn Press and said, how much is a box of books? And they were very fast and speedy with delivery, by the way. So.
yes. Well, the stores are a little bit, more behind than normal because of COVID. They're not buying as much up front. They're being a little more conservative than normal, but I think they've cottoned on now.
So too.
Does anyone else have any questions that they'd like to ask our author and illustrator before we close for the evening?
I have a question.
Great.
Hi. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
My name is Bridget. I teach grade 1 students on PEI, and pretty excited to get your book. Probably a few weeks ago. I just happened to be in Bookmark, and it was there on the and I was like, oh my goodness, what's this? And I guess my question, you talked about it a little bit, Julie, but as a non-Mi'kmaq teacher teaching a lot of non-Mi'kmaq students, how do you envision me, or what's the really important things you'd like me to know when I'm reading this book with my students?
Oh my goodness, just sharing the stories, just sharing the pictures. I mean, I had when my little guy, one of those big guys that were drumming earlier, but when he was little, he we went to a powwow when they had it down at Confederation Landing, and he dressed in his full regalia, and then he had soccer practice after. So we went right to the soccer field, and there was about 6 or 7 kids in his class, and they all started laughing at him and saying, "Why are you wearing a dress?" The car, and he didn't want to come out. So I felt right then and there, like I talked to his teacher, and I actually went in and brought regalia in and talked about the significance and the importance. And whether it was me as an Indigenous woman or whether it was the teacher saying people will wear different clothing from their customs and their traditions and their history. People might speak a different language from where they come from, or how they, you know, how they speak to their own families. That difference is, once they see them and they can recognize them, then it doesn't become something that they can tease another child with because everybody's aware of it. No, that's not a dress. Do you remember in that book, those regalia on the front cover? Like, those are regalia. So even just being able to share those stories with your students, and when they see the covers and they say, well, why are they all so colorful? You know, like there's those sort of questions, or why did they have all this? And then, you know, there's a little male dancer there, see, with the feathers on his back there. And I mean, when you look at them, you can see that what it does is a very, very gentle cultural sensitivity training just by reading the book and seeing the pictures. And if invite them if they have questions. And if there's some questions that you can't answer, you message me and I'll get right back to you.
I'm really grateful that you read a bit, and also with the chants, because I was a little intimidated to kind of like launch it and do it, and you know, because I wasn't quite sure how to sing or say the chants, and so hearing you do it, you know, I hope, because I would like them to hear it the way it's meant to be heard. So I was really grateful that you did that tonight.
Well, I was very blessed and honored that I am now slowly getting back into the schools in a very safe social distancing way. I was out in Mount Stewart for Orange T-shirt Day, and they brought just small groups of kids outside with, you know, spacing and everything. And I talked about Orange Shirt Day. And I think I'm going to a daycare next Friday, and we're going to go outside and just play and do some drumming and let them dance. And then hopefully, you know, I might bring a story or two for them to read. And then I think there's a bunch of more schools, like where I'm going up east to those schools. But because it's still nice out, and because we can bring smaller groups outside, I'm able to go into more schools, which makes me so happy, because that's a place where you can see their eyes just light up. Because I usually bring I have a little tickle trunk of things, like I say, this is a Mi'kmaq basket, and this is a jiggajeech, because this, it looks like a little snail, so we call that a jiggajeech. And then you can see the star that's made in here, and then this is the back, and you see the artist. So I'll bring like things so that they can, I pass them around and they can touch them and feel them. And I find that when you go and tell them stories, it's really the feelings they remember more than the actual stories or the words, or, you know, as they say, well, it's what you're wearing. No, it's not what you're wearing. It's how you make them feel, right?
Yep,
So
totally.
being able to do that, and for me to know that other people are taking the time to understand these stories, so that when they do share them with the kids in their classes, I think that's amazing. And I appreciate that so much. And I'm so glad you're doing that. Thank you.
It was great. And I had another teacher too who found out I had the book and came down and said, "You have that new book, right? By Julie Pellisier-Lush." And I saw it and yeah, here it is here. So it's spreading
And,
around.
and
Word of mouth,
another,
word of mouth.
and another thing, I don't know how much of this you can see, but if you brought this into the school, I have an illustration here of my interpretation. What would peace look like? You know, and if we got all these children, we'd do a contest, a coin contest. What would it look like to them after they hear some of the stories? Do a contest, and then maybe a commemorative coin, and really get the kids at all grade levels, because you're going to get so many different like ideas from that, and really get people talking, adults, students, and the children. And that's what we want to, as a long-term goal, accomplish. So this is just the beginning, the very beginning. Yeah.
That's great, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Bridget, this is Mi'kmaq Heritage Month. October is,
Yeah.
and you know they, you know, PEI government doesn't seem to do a lot for that. I could be wrong, but it does seem to be a bit more in the other provinces. But it's a great time to be telling these stories, and maybe, you know, once a week or something, you could tell one of the stories through the month, or, you know, kind of get these, you know, get into a groove of sort of sharing the heritage in that way that Laurie was talking about and stuff too. I think it's really a great
we've
time.
been doing, I mean, you know, sort of leading up to Orange Shirt Day, kind of doing quite a bit of, you know, being aware of it not just being one day, but, you know, leading into a bigger story, and that there's a lot to share, both historically and contemporary, about, you know, Mi'kmaq people on PEI. And so that's, I'd like to just, it's so timely, the book, for that reason. And we have a great outdoor space at the school that I work at, you know, that is in a circle in the woods, and we can go out there while the weather's good, as Julie was saying, and do some readings and kind of, you know, touch the land and think about what the story of this place is and things like that. So I think I think, like you said, it's the beginning, but I'm grateful for the local resources that are coming out, you know, to kind of support.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Carla, did you have a question?
I don't really have a question as much as a comment. And it's so funny. Hi, Bridget. I used to work with Bridget last year, the year before. I can't even remember. It's all a blur. And I didn't realize you were teaching grade 1. And so I was coming on as a former grade 1 teacher to say thank you. I've been wanting to get your book, and of course, you know, things happen and it didn't happen. And so last night, as I was looking at the event, I bought 4 copies from the bookmark, because I thought there's one for my family and one for my nephews, and then I need 2 more, because just, you know, there's going to be a place to share those. And I just think it's so beautiful, and for especially the local, to have that local resource. As a grade 1 teacher, and of course having close family ties to the Mi'kmaq culture and spirituality and all of those things, I just have such a deep connection to it. I wanted to always share that with my students, but as a white woman, wasn't sure how to do that in a respectful way, because there wasn't a whole lot available to us, and we didn't have any of those local resources, or if we did, I would have some limited resources, but not as much. And I appreciate also what Bridget said about the chanting. You know, I one of the questions I kind of did have in my head is, you know, I hope that there was some sort of opportunity for you to work with teachers on this, and to chant with teachers, because that's very intimidating. You know, if you're not a singer, if you're not, you want to be respectful of the culture, and you're not really comfortable or whatever. And the last thing I just wanted to say was of this whole campfire and circle and how beautiful that is, because one of the ways we make change, obviously, is through building relationships. And the best way we build relationships is through hearing other people's stories and sharing our own. And I think that it's a really beautiful part of all of our history, no matter what the color we are or what gender we are, is that we all we have a connection to PEI, and so we can all kind of share in that creation story. And no one story is the right story, right? And so, like you said, there's like 8 different ones in that one. So I just think that that's really beautiful in showing people that we can all be different and we can all be the same and share so many things. And so I cannot wait to get my hands on that book and read it and share it. So thank you so much, Julie and Laurie, for sharing that with
You're
us.
welcome.
Oh. No, that is awesome. I was thinking we have enough time maybe for a quick song.
Excellent.
Yes.
We started in a circle virtually, and we're still gathered here, and we have 2 more minutes. And here we go. And I'm thinking a good song, because if I bring the boys in, then I'm going down and having to direct them. So I think I'll just do it myself. So this song will be, let's see, which one should we do? I think we'll do a round dance song. And that should be probably in the next book, because I really love the round dance, and it's a way to express and to reconnect with everybody. You way higher, you way higher, you way higher, you way higher, way higher, hi-yo, way higher, hey-yo, you way higher, way higher, way higher, yo, way. You way higher, you way higher, you way higher, you way higher, way higher, oh, way higher, hey, oh, you way higher, way higher, way higher, you way. And thank you, everybody, for coming here tonight and being a part of this amazing event. And it's meant so much to me to be able to look around and see everybody's happy, smiling face because of this opportunity. And I feel like Laurie and I are living the dream right now. It's amazing. What a feeling it is. I say, what an adventure it is every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I feel like we're living the dream too. And I just love being part of this project and feel very honored to be able to publish such amazing work. And, I'm getting a little choked up. So I think it might be a good time to sort of finish up. But there will be a recording of this on the website, just so if people want to know the chanting, that's a good way to kind of hear the chant, kind of get how it sounds in your ear. Go and check. Laurie, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was going to say thank you very much for having the patience and seeing our vision of what we want, what we accomplished and where we want to go. And yeah, looking forward to this and much, much more in the future.
Me too. It's very exciting.
Excellent. We'll have a wonderful night, everyone.
Okay, thanks.